Alright, so here we are. I've said what I've done what I said I would do, and let's see what I do. I amended the drawing, and then I copied the diagonal curve over there. So there's the three curves, the three tall curves. Here now, I'm standing on top of one of them, and then down there, all the way down there, are the three lower curves. That's there underneath the cloud there, and then there's one there. I don't want to move too much. I've fallen over once. I've fallen off once and killed myself. So, so far death count is 1 on the construction of this desert rose. So the 6 curves are complete. And I was thinking I would want to explain to you what I'm thinking of doing next. But it's kind of complicated. But at least now I've got this completed, so then, well, not completed, but I've got the all these lines down, so I can actually point to these lines instead of trying to talk about the drawing that you have to click in the description, right? Which, I don't know how many of you understand what that means anyway, that drawing. So, so I'm thinking the easy, or one of the options for, filling this thing out, so there's more than lines is, you see these. So there's like a circle. So around the... Oh, I just get on top of the middle one, don't I? Maybe I should do that. Alright. So around the outside of the 3 circles, there's one more circle which I haven't drawn. But it is... I mean, I haven't built, but I have drawn in the drawing. So the circle that's centered on that... Yeah, the center of the circle is there, I believe. And the radius goes all the way out to the edge of that circle there, and it goes, around there to the edge of that circle, and then around to the edge of that circle, and then back around. And then from there, there's a whole series of concentric circles. Those are the concentric circles on the right side of the diagram. So I was thinking one option is to do that to the big circle. So at each level where it steps down, the radius shrinks, and so you kind of make a series of circles. So in the end, you have this kind of bow-like thing. So the whole thing is just circular, or it's like a lathe, shape, and it's circular, right? If you imagine like a bowl, a circular bowl, kind of like that. But then we cut it along the edges of these 3 circles. So then imagine out of that bowl you cut out this trefoil shape. So the 3 circles, and then of course when they join up, then the ball will kind of join up again. So there's like these 3 leaves that's cut out of this bowl, and I don't know if that makes sense, but the shape of it would then be quite simple because it's just a series of concentric circles. So the geometry of this curved leaf thing here would be quite simple. So it's just the radius, and then the outline of that circle will be cut out. So it's like a cookie cutter thing out of the bowl. And so geometry wise, it will be fairly simple to figure out. And that's one of the options for how I'm going to fill out this thing. And I was not sure if I want to do that. And then for the tall one, I should be careful when I talk. So these taller curves, it'll be a similar thing. There'll be 3 smaller circles, one there, one there. I've added that to the drawing too, and then one there. And it'll be a similar thing. So the radius of the circle at each level, like there, I guess it'll be like that. And then the cutout of the circle will be the edge of it. So then in the end, it'll probably kind of go around like this a little bit, if that makes sense. It'll be like a giant blade of leaf, giant leaf blade sort of shape, except it's curved in 2 directions. So I was thinking, well, that's one option, and geometrically it's kind of easier to visualize and to understand. But I was thinking, well, maybe is that too simple? Because that's a problem for me, right? Because I'm the kind of person where, no, it's too simple. It's only curved in 2 directions. I need to curve it like in 4 directions. So I'm that kind of person. So I was thinking maybe that's too simple. Maybe that's too easy. So then maybe instead of just having, the center point here and then a series of circles going out, getting bigger and bigger, and then that's the basis for this curve thing. maybe instead of that, I can have like a different radii, so that so this thing will be a different shape or curve in a different way. Maybe it'll be like a sharper point here, like an actual leaf, which is much more complex geometrically. But then I figure, well, that's too difficult. That's too difficult. So at the moment, after some thought and after seeing, the extent of this thing, I was thinking probably the simpler option, unless there's like another way to do it. And I mean, this isn't simple. It's still, kind of complicated, but it's kind of the simpler of a number of different options. And there's, I don't know if do you guys know the Sydney Opera House? I'm sure you do. If you don't, just go to Google and just type in Sydney Opera House. So that thing, I mean, the concept for that was quite complex. Like you know that it's like a series of kind of curving bits, white, curving bits that's cut out, and it's very complex geometry. I mean, that was like a competition. Like they had a competition for it, and the competition entry was similar to that. The curves were slightly different, and originally that guy won, but then they didn't actually pick to build his because it was too difficult. But then the guy who kind of ran the competition said, "What the hell are you guys doing? He won the competition. We're gonna build it. Like, what the hell's the point of having a competition if you don't build it?" Alright, so then they had a big argument, and they went back and they weren't gonna build it, and then they were gonna build it, and then they couldn't figure out how to build it because it was all these complex curves. And then eventually, one of the engineers decided, well, why don't we just, instead of making all of these curves completely different and arbitrary and, all different, we'll just have all of them as pieces of a sphere. And eventually they did that. So all the curves are in fact spheres. So in the drawings, in the sketches, in the competition sketches, they weren't all spherical. But then they said, well, we can't actually build this. It's too difficult. So they made them all the same. So it's all spheres. And spheres are kind of difficult, but it's much easier than completely arbitrary, three-dimensional curved shapes, right? So then they made all the pieces of the Sydney Opera House out of spheres, or out of parts of spheres, and then they managed to do it. Because I mean, if it's parts of spheres, you can make it all modular because every part of the sphere is the same as every other part of the sphere. So you can just kind of make it. And I think it's concrete shells. So I mean, you can just kind of make one mold, or like you cast the concrete pieces in that mold, and you just kind of use the same mold because it's all the same shape because it's a sphere, right? Whereas if it's not a sphere, if it's all kind of changing and then all the curves are different angles and everything else, then you couldn't do that. So by choosing to make it a kind of a based on sphere pieces, they made that geometry much easier to calculate and to build, and then they managed to build the Sydney Opera House. So that's the story. And the reason I tell that story is because sometimes you have to do that. I mean, when you have a complex shape, you have to kind of somehow make it simpler to calculate in order to make it buildable. And what I'm kind of facing here is a similar kind of problem where I can make every one of these really complex and arbitrary curves, or I can just make them circles. Because circles are easier. It's not that easy, but it's much easier in Minecraft than arbitrary curves. So I can kind of base this on circles, like a lathe shape, and then cut these out of the circles, and then that would make it make it geometrically much simpler for me to build. So what I'm trying to say is that I am as amazing as the Sydney Opera House. So no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I think I would like do a similar thing, just make the geometry simpler. I still think the outcome is going to be quite impressive. In that it's going to be curvy in every direction, but we're just going to stick with the circles, I think, just to make it buildable. I hope it's like, I'm always afraid that maybe they'll make it too simple. Maybe then they'll make it too like dumb. Like, you look at it from a distance, it's kind of dumb, you know, it's kind of simple, easy. But maybe, I don't know. I hope it's not going to turn out like that. And I can always just test it, or I can get more dirt. I actually don't think I have enough dirt for that. I may or may not have enough dirt for that, but I can always just get my dirt and then try it out and see if it looks dumb or not. But there you go. So that's a little story about the Sydney Opera House. And yeah, I'll probably try. I'll try the circles thing at least once. I might try to do one of these and then maybe do one of these, and just see what the shape looks like once you've done it. Because, you know, drawing the plan of it on paper, or even just looking at the plan of it like this, looking down at it, it's not the same as being on the ground and looking at it from the side. And, you know, when you kind of draw these curves on the sides, it's not the same as looking at it in perspective, you know, in the game. So you kind of don't know what this thing is going to look like until you actually build it and look at it. So I'm going to have to do that. Probably, I don't think I have enough dirt though. We'll see. So that's a bit of storytelling. The other thing is, yes, I did modify the drawing of the curve because I built the first curve wrong, and then I built the second curve wrong based on the first curve, and so I went back and changed the drawing instead. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, the fact that, you know, I had a plan, I made a mistake, and instead of fixing the mistake, I just changed the plan. Like, I'd usually say that's a bad idea. Like, I usually say that's like a cop-out, like you're not supposed to do that. Like, if you just kind of, you had a good idea, and then you can't figure out how to do it, so you kind of turn it into a bad idea. That's not really a good way to make architecture, right? You know, I would usually say that. But in this case, you know, the change was very minimal. Like, it was kind of one block off, and it didn't really change the overall shape very much, and it didn't really change the idea at all. And sometimes, you know, sometimes you have to do that. Like, if you're a real architect, like you've made the drawings, or maybe either, I mean, it doesn't really even matter whose mistake it is. Maybe you made a mistake in the drawing, or maybe the builder or the engineer made a mistake in the construction site, and then it's, you know, it's a bit off. And what are you gonna do? Like, you're gonna take the engineer, and then the two of you are gonna go talk to the client who's paying millions of dollars to build this thing, and you're gonna say, hey, we kind of like built this like a meter off, so you're gonna have to give us several million more dollars to rebuild the whole thing. You can't do that to your client. The client's not gonna do that. It's like, wait, are you kidding me? I'm not gonna give you more money, right? No, you take your money and you fix it because it is your mistake. So I mean, once the mistake has happened, you know, nobody's in a good place. Nobody's having a good time. But if you can kind of modify the design a little bit, still have the building work pretty much exactly how you wanted it to work, except it's a meter in a different direction, but it's still gonna work, and, you know, no one's gonna complain about it. Then if you can do that, and you just change the plan, then nobody has to pay millions of dollars more, and everything still works, and everyone can go home happy. So sometimes you have to do that. And you know, it's not even about whose mistake it was. I mean, maybe it was, you know, the engineer's mistake, and then you go and take him to court and get him to, you know, squeeze a few $1 million out of him to get him to fix it. I mean, instead of doing that, if you can just kind of, you know, be flexible and solve the problem, and everybody can go home happy, you end up with the, you know, your project is more likely to be successful, and your relationships with your engineers and your clients is more likely to be successful. If you can, you know, just be flexible. Just be flexible. Of course, it's not this. Oh, I should turn this off so you can actually see what's going on. I mean, there's no simple answer, right? Sometimes you can't some things you can't compromise, but some things you can. And I guess the question is knowing which things you should compromise and which things you really shouldn't. In this case, I decided I'm going to compromise the curve a little bit, so it's going to be one block off. It lines up better anyway in the end, and I'm not too concerned about, you know, changing the shape of the curve by one block. I mean, it still looks pretty much how I drew it. So there's a lot of clouds in the way right now, and we can't see it. So I was hoping we'd just kind of step back and see the whole thing. But clouds. I also noticed there's a village here. I didn't notice this before. I think this means we should probably fortify this village and put torches down. So there's at least 2 villages inside this new expansion, this new desert expansion. Yeah, look at that, there's a village here. I should probably fortify this when I have time. Let's just check if there's still villages here. Wow, the clouds moved out of the way. Anyway, so there's a bit more storytelling, just in case you guys thought that the counting dirt blocks was not interesting enough for this series of videos. Here's some little stories. And what should I do next? I guess I can test out the shape of the thing next. I'll need glass. I haven't harvested any sand yet. I will need glass, because I do want to build this thing out of glass. I need a lot of glass. I guess that's another thing we need to do, is to figure out where we're going to get the sand from. I know there's a massive desert, so I mean, where's it going to come from, right? The desert, of course. But what I mean is, which part of the desert am I going to pillage first? And, how big I want to strip mine the thing. I'm going to need quite a bit of sand. Although at the same time, if we're thinking of each of these leaves as one, it's a sheet of glass, the 1 block, or at least, or the most like 2 blocks thick. It's not going to be that much sand. I mean, it'll be like, the area of this thing times 2, and then maybe a bit more for the tall bit. So I mean, there's going to be a bit of glass. It's not going to be that much glass. In comparison with the size of the desert, I mean. I'm not gonna have to dig up the whole desert. I'm just gonna have like a significant patch of the desert, but not the whole thing. There's still clouds in the way, guys. I really wanna just step back and see all the things. And can I turn off the clouds? Can I do that? Can I? Clouds off. Oh, here you go. Here, clouds off. And we can barely see it. So you can see the curves, and then you see the other curves. Is that good? Like, is that good? Do you guys think that's good? Do you think that has potential? I'm not sure. Maybe I've been looking at it too much. I mean, it's not really it's kind of cool, but it's not that. So these circles aren't going to be there in the end. It's going to be the curves. Just going to be these big curvy petal things. Look, we can't make it any bigger. It already goes up to the height limit, and it's already, at the very edge of the view distance, so we can't actually make this any bigger. Sometimes I just say, hey, just make it bigger. If you want it to be more impressive, just make it bigger. That's pretty easy. We can't do that anymore with this one. Is that good? It just seems like it took so much work. It took so much work to get these diagonals and curves in place, and then all we get out of it is like 6 lines of dirt. But it took so much work, Anyway, so there we go. I'm just gonna stop rambling for a bit. So, to fortify the village, we need to figure out where to get the sand, and we're gonna test out the bow, or the lathe, or I don't know what to call it. The circles, the radius, and the shape of these things. Alright, I'll stop rambling, although I do kind of want to just indulge myself a little bit since I've put in so much hard work these past few days. I'll figure out what I want to do next, and then we'll see you in the next video. Alright.